I've already given you some high level, but we'll take it a little bit deeper. So 9 energy is fascinating because 9 is one of the like tricky numbers where it's a mirror. Whenever you add to 9, reflects back to itself. Okay. So 9 can be a bit of a chameleon. For example, like whatever number you add to 9, say you add 3 or 4 or 5 to 9, right? So 3 plus 9 is 12. 1 plus 2 is 3. Reflects back. 4 plus 9, 13. 1 plus 3, 4, right? So it's always going to collapse back to the other number, which means that if you aren't clear in your center, it will be very easy to get swept up in other people's. Because 9 is the chameleon, it can meld and it can mold very easily, which can be helpful at times, but not if that melding and molding is going to take you off path, right? And this is why I think it's so important to be in community with other people who you're celebrating their strength. Because if you see their strength, then that's going to be mirrored back to you. If you're celebrating their wins, if you're celebrating their successes, if you're cheering them on, that will be mirrored back to you. And so this recognizing this mirror is a double-edged sword, right? The strength of the mirror is that when I surround myself with people who are an embodiment of the energy I desire, or who are working on cool stuff, or who have traits in them that I admire, that means that my admirable traits get amplified, right? Whereas if I get surrounded by the doubts, the fears, the insecurities, my doubts, fears, and insecurities will also be amplified. And because 9 is a very mental, analytical, mind-based number, it's in the mental plane, mindset is key. As you could probably tell from those two stories of like the tale of two cities. I don't even know what to call it. The city where people are doing cool stuff and that's mirrored in you, admiral traits mirrored in you, versus the city mired in doubt and insecurity and that being mirrored to you, right? How does that play out in the outer world is like, yeah, who you surround yourself, the media you consume, the narratives that are happening around you, but it's also the narratives in your head, and those feed each other, right? So if you're noticing narratives in your head and you're like, oh shoot, this is a narrative of like doubt, insecurity, and fear, don't beat yourself up over it, but find a way to change the narrative. If I don't have the power to change the narrative of myself, I will find a way to do it, which is why I became so obsessed. Some of you have access to them. I became so obsessed with the audios that I created this year, where the audio contains the narrative that I would like my brain to be feeding me, right? You can do it through listening to an audiobook, listening to a podcast, listening to a hypnosis track, listening to an inspirational book, listening to a numerology forecast. There's a great way. Listening to my podcast. There's another great way. But find the narratives that feed the city that you want to live in. Okay. That is my number one key piece of advice is mindset, mental game needs to be strong. So the other thing I would invite you to get curious about is when your mental game is not so strong, right? You're having thoughts that you're like, ooh, this is like very self-doubting thoughts. Asking yourself, okay, step back for a minute here. What is the context that contributed to the self-doubting thought? Like what preceded the self-doubting thought? What happened first? Like I got a bad sleep, or I watched the news by accident, or I got caught up in some kind of drama of stuff that's not my business, or what? Like what contributed to the decline in mindset? Because your mindset it's not like, it's not, I mean, I guess it can go willy-nilly on its own, but it's looking to be fed. So how are we feeding it? Recognizing when I have a great mindset where I'm at and when I have a not so great mindset where I'm at, and being so disciplined and so discerning. And the reason I'm saying being so disciplined and so discerning is because it's as if, okay, it's as if we're on this pathway and we're being presented a fork in the road. And both of these forks in the road may be kind of blurry and kind of fuzzy, right? So, which one is going to become the clear route to take? That is going to depend on your mind. That is going to depend on visualization and mental rehearsing and your vision board and your ability to set goals and remind yourself of your goals, your ability to write your gratitudes out, your ability to, whatever. And it's this idea of the same way an athlete would mentally rehearse, scoring the winning goal on their hockey team or, running the fastest lap in their relay race. Their mental rehearsal creates their physical reality, creates the results. And it's going to be the same for us. And this is true all the time, guys. It's not like it's new news to you, but in the 9, it's critical because of how important the mental energy is and because of the sacred transition. If there's these two paths in front of me and I'm choosing the sacred transition from like the caterpillar to the butterfly, it's not linear. I can continue to circle on the path I've not chosen by not managing my mindset and belief systems effectively. Or I get to have my sacred transition and move to a new experience by managing the stories I tell myself and my mental patterns and my rehearsing. Are you guys feeling this? Questions? The other reason I really wanted to take you on a journey in this is because you don't have to do any of this alone, right? Like you can call that animal to come to you and be like, hey, help me out here. I'm stuck in these self-doubtful patterns and I actually don't know. Are they real? Are they not real? Are they true? Are they untrue? Because this is the illusion of the self-doubtful patterns is they can feel true, right? And so we're thinking them and we're thinking them and we're thinking that they're facts, right? And it's like, is this a fact? Has that happened to someone in the last few months? Tell me I'm not the only one where I find myself thinking something and I'm like, is this a fact? Or did I just like pick something up and start thinking it and then chose to believe it? Or is it like factually accurate? And I think, again, I'd love to hear if I'm alone in this or not, but it feels to me with the way the collective energy is moving lately is what's factually accurate is becoming smaller and smaller. Does that make sense? Or maybe it's our perception, right? Is this an actual fact, right? Let's check this. Yeah. A fact versus an opinion. Yeah. And it reminds me, I've been talking a lot about her work in the past year, Byron Katie, where she talks about what is it called? She's got the four questions. The work, that's what it's called, the work. And the questions, the first question is it true? And how can I absolutely know it's true? Right? And if you can check yourself with that, a lot can that can just be so helpful. Okay. So you're with me on the two paths. So the question I would ask yourself as you do any year ahead planning, any quarterly planning, any monthly planning, anything, is to ask yourself, imagine there's two paths here. Doesn't have to be two, there can be many, there can be more than two. It's just kind of easier to conceptualize in your mind as two paths. And which path am I planning for? Right? Which path am I planning for? Because I may or may not see the evidence of it being factual yet, right? But like if I'm mentally rehearsing my reality and my mental rehearsing creates my reality, let me plan for the path of my choice, right? Let me plan for the path of my choice. And you can also take this analogy into the brain with neural networks, right? So you have your default neural networks, your default thought patterns and belief systems, and your default, depending on the stats you look at, like something like 95% of what you think every day is just what you thought yesterday. It's just a rehearsal of the past, right? So this is Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. For anyone who's like, I need to understand this deeper, pick up one of his books or listen to one of his, YouTube podcasts, whatever. He's actually been on a lot of really good interviews lately. If you look him up in podcasts, you'll see some of them. But like, if 95% of what I'm thinking is just a rehearsal of my past, what do I need to do to bring my new pathway forward, knowing that I'm at the fork in the road with the nine. This is the sacred transition. From the nine, we move into the one, which is the fresh start and the new beginning, right? So how do I make this happen? Yes, I can think of it as happening out here, but really it's happening with my neural networks in here. Okay. It's separation season is another way of looking at the sacred transition, meaning that, this idea of separation season, I think, comes from the fitness industry of like when everybody else lets off the gas and backslides, you can choose to put in your extra reps and get ahead. And not that I'm like touting, lack of rest or hustle or excessively pushing yourself, but lay in bed in the imaginal realm and mentally rehearse what you want your things to look like. And that's like separation season rest style. Like create that reality for yourself, right? Create that reality for yourself. Okay. Yes. Yes. That facts are being broadcast less and less and less. Yes. So good. Thank you for saying that. The other piece that this makes true, if you kind of agree to some degree with what I've said so far, is that what's more important than the physical evidence is what's happening inside you. So if a person was unfamiliar with the transition from caterpillar to butterfly, and they saw the chrysalis hanging in a tree somewhere or on a plant somewhere, it would look like nothing, right? If this happened to my kids a few years ago, they found an egg, a massive egg. They thought it was an eagle egg. I think at the end of the day, we decided it was probably a goose egg, Canadian goose egg. Anyways, they found this massive egg and they were carrying it around and they're like, is there a baby in it? Is there a baby in it? And it's like, we don't know. Could be alive, could be dead, right? It's probably dead, but we don't know. And I think this is where when we see something in the outer world that we don't fully understand, we make a story about it. We fill in the facts with, we fill in our story with the gap in facts, is what happens. So if that's the case, what's actually more important is what I've created as real inside me, because then that gets to fill in the gaps. That gets to fill in all the empty spaces where I've drawn assumptions and conclusions which were not there. And the reason I want to talk about this is because some of you have heard me talk about like the lens of how we see the world. Every single one of us has different colored glasses on. That the color of your glasses is determined by your codes, right? The energy you were born to embody, the gifts that you have to share, your sacred medicine. It's also colored by your life experiences, your cultural upbringing, your education, whatever. It's experience, it's your lens is colored by who you are, your energy, and how you've lived your life so far. And that's going to change. Like that's going to determine what you see. So if you're walking around with a certain color of lens, you will be able to see certain opportunities, certain doors, certain windows, right? That are a contrast. If you take those glasses off and you put on a different lens, different doors will be available to you. You will see things differently because of the way colors work, right? Like those books we had when we were kids, you put the glasses on, you could see a shape, you take the glasses off, you don't see the shape anymore, right? That's how our reality works. That's why when people say, oh, if you change your frequency or you change your vibration, you will be more abundant. Well, it's not that the abundance just all of a sudden appears. The abundance is always there. It's a matter of, do you have the lens to see the opportunity for it? Right? And so what can you control around your lens? What can you control around the colors that you see the world through? That's your inner thought patterns, your inner conditioning. When you're working with your codes, it's, am I stuck in the challenge aspect of my code? Or am I leaning into the gift and strength aspect of my code and letting that be the lens that I see the world through? Right? If I walk around the world carrying the lens of I'm too sensitive and I shouldn't be talking about this stuff and people are going to think I'm weird, I will attract doors that show that to be true to me, right? Whereas if I carrying the lens of my sensitivity is my gift, it's what makes me unique, it's what helps me support other people, it's what makes it so that my community feels understood, then if I'm wearing that, I'll continue to attract circumstances that show me that that's true, right? So I want you to think to yourself, like if you could decide what the lenses were made up of that you're wearing, what are those patterns? Because they are going to be manifesting the 9 energy year for you, right? They are going to be determining which path you're on, which transition you're facing, which reality you're creating through those patterns. And then choosing that energy that's within you is more important than what's outside of you. The other thing I think that's going to be so fun and loud is the obviousness of fakeness and lack of authenticity. It's going to start to become more and more humorous, I think, over time, how obvious misalignment is. So this is, I don't know, like treat it with some enjoyment, I guess. Treat it as like a bit of a comedy show. I don't even know. But like the fakeness, the lack of authenticity, the wearing ill-fitting clothes, and that's the metaphor for trying to pretend to be something you're not, it's just going to show through. And I think that's such a gift for people who are leading with the desire to be truthful, come from their heart, um, and they're not trying to, be something they're not, right? It is rampant in business. And anytime you know that you see something that's rampant, it's ready for that like bubble to burst, is what I see. And then with the nine, like the nine is just like no nonsense. Like I was like, I'm done with this. I'm over it. I'm over it. It's gonna be so interesting. Okay. The other thing that came up, you guys, that I was kind of excited about, this message is there are going to be different rules for different people. And it will be very obvious that there are different rules for different people. And it will be very obvious to see that some people are playing by these rules and it'll be clear. And other people are playing by these rules. And you're like, they have different rules, right? And I think this is going to be fascinating because I think, well, number one, it's up to us to decide what the rules are that we're playing. Nobody's imposing the rules upon us. Okay. So you will see different people playing by different rules. Um, and it's up to them to consent that those rules be imposed upon them or that they choose the rules. And why I'm saying that is because I think this is going to be how we get the wake up calls, right? So I think the wake up call is going to look like, wait a second, I don't like the way this game is being played right now. And if you find yourself saying that throughout this 9 energy year, it's the wake up call to be like, ooh, hold on a second. If I don't consent to these rules, I'm going to choose new rules and we're changing the game, right? It's like playing a board game with a 6-year-old. They change the rules if they're losing. Like, why cannot we do that too? Right? Like, oh, you get a bonus turn? Okay, you're the 6-year-old. You get to decide, right? So just who says you can't? Who says you can't? So recognizing, and I think the reason that this is coming up so loudly is because the quote unquote rules that we play by are stories. We've already seen that so many stories that we've been thinking are real, factual, and true are not, or maybe there's shreds of truth in there, but there's a lot of made upness in there too. And we're in the sacred transition. So it's like, okay, back to the drawing board. Erase that. Start again. What do you want now? Right? Ooh, the water analogy. This came through so good to me in such a beautiful way, and it's going to help us to take this like rules idea even a step deeper. I was shown this image. Okay, anybody else here like a lake girly, like love to float on the lake, love your paddleboard, love to swim? I mean, it maybe works in the ocean too, but you only works in a perfectly flat, calm ocean. This is why I'm not an ocean girly because I don't like waves. I want it to be perfectly flat and calm. Okay. Big lake, paddleboard, and like glass. That's what I want. Okay. So have you ever done this when you lay and you're swimming and you're like, you can put your face in and it's a whole world. And then you put your face up and just like noticing the difference. Or like, even if you're wearing your goggles and you put it at the line, right? The water line. So half of you can see under and half of you can see over. Or you can do this with your iPhone. If you put your iPhone in the water in the right position, your phone will capture what's below the water and what's above the water. If someone's on the water and they're not a lake person, they don't like to go in the water. They like to be on the water, whether it's like on a boat or on a dock or whatever. The reality they see is very real, right? There's a lake, looks like a mirror. There's mountains, there's trees, whatever. But they have no idea that there's like an entire world under the surface that they literally can't see because the lake is a mirror, right? And then when you're fully submerged under the water, that is the only thing that feels super real. Like you look around and all you see is the rocks and the fish and the seaweed and whatever, depending on what lake you're swimming in, right? That's all you see. Whereas if you allow yourself to have your goggles half in, half out of the water, you can see both worlds, right? You can see both worlds. And this, I think, is what we are being asked to really recognize, is that just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. I might be floating on the surface right now, on my boat, and so I can't see under the lake. I can't see all the fish and all the seaweed and all the whatever's going on down there. If I'm swimming with my eyes open, I have no clue about the birds that are flying above me or the mountains above me. I cannot see that, but it's there. And I think it's so important to try to slow down this year and give yourself permission to see between both, right? And I notice for myself that when I'm floating and the lake is still, and I'm not, like, you can't be paddling and kicking because then you can't see it because it's turned stirs up the bubbles and you can't see it. You have to be still and you have to be slow. The coolest thing happened to us this summer when we were doing this. I was on the shore at this point, but my daughter was floating on my paddleboard and she had goggles on and was laying like on her stomach on the paddleboard watching the water. And a family of lake otters popped up like 2 feet away from her. And there was like 6 or 7 of them, which we'd never seen more than 2 or 3 before at the lake. So it was incredible. But if she wasn't lying perfectly still, there's no way they would have come up to her, right? There's no way. So slow down. Ask yourself what might be under the surface that you can't see, but is very real, right? What's there? Okay. Questions about the high level? Are you guys ready for me to go into some of the month details? Yay. I'm glad. Okay. Let's break it down a bit. So I'm going to kind of keep the month details high level because every month I do a monthly forecast. So if you guys are enjoying this, make sure to keep your eyes peeled for the monthly forecasts. The other thing to keep in mind, like I said, you have a personal forecast. What I'm sharing is universal. You have a personal forecast, which is based on you and your birthday. So if anybody here has not taken advantage of my year ahead forecast readings, I do have like a handful of more spots. So if you want a personal forecast in January, just send me a DM because I'm still offering them at the sale price until those spots are sold out. So there is just a few. If you're like, I need to go deeper in my circumstances, then I'd love to support you in that way. Okay, so January. This is actually really cool because January is like never a one. It's never a one. It's a one this time because of the way the 9 and the mirror works. So when we start January, it is actual new fresh start energy, right? Like for those of you who are like, I'm going to do the New Year's resolution thing and the vision board thing, great. That is great. January is a one. Do it. Do all the vision boards. all the New Year resolutions. It's perfect. It's fresh start. It's seed planting. It's daydreaming. It's, imagining what could be. It's like planning, like it's thinking things to be real, right? Like thinking things to be like as to how you want them to go. Um, I will say that there's a lot of transformation in the first few months of the year. And so I think this transformation is like we're kicking off the nine of like, we're seeing underneath the surface. We're seeing the depths. We're recognizing the thought patterns or the pathways we've been walking on that are like not so real anymore, right? Maybe they used to be real, but they're not so real anymore, or they're not what we're choosing anymore. And good on us, right? So there's going to be a lot of change, a lot of transformation in January. Um, let yourself be open to your spiritual soul gifts growing and evolving, particularly how you communicate. So those of you who have clairsenses or who have intuition, who have some kind of energy gifts, of which we all do, by the way. So I'm not singling people out because we all do. Some of us just work with them in a more obvious way than others. Um, expect those to be shifting a little bit and learning new ways to work with them, new ways to communicate with them, and strengthening. So if that's something you want, set the intention for that to happen in January. Moving into February, February is two energy. It's all about connection and collaboration. And yes, strengthening your intuition, strengthening your connection with spirit and with your inner voice. It's also an incredibly important time for you to claim your authority, right? So claim your authority. Decide, I am the authority on this. This is what I'm the authority on. This is what my vibrational medicine is. So just like in your garden, you received vibrational medicine from the plants and the animals and the crystal, you yourself carry vibrational medicine. And that is your authority, right? The flavor and the texture of your vibrational medicine is your authority. Claim it. And if you don't know what it is, that's fine. Like come to me and get a reading because I can help you. But if you don't know what it is, just affirm it's there and start to own that and start to recognize that. Your way of working with it will continue to be strengthened throughout February. So stay connected with your intuition, stay connected to your inner voice, and experiment. Let yourself play. If you have a friend who's willing to do swaps and trades, like, oh, I want to practice with you or on you. Let's do a trade. Let's try this together. Let's create a circle and like meet and talk about it. That would be a great time to do that in February. Moving into March, March is about expression and amplification. So what you think about will be expanding. What you talk about will be expanding. March is not the month to complain, right? Like we all need times to vent. I'm here for it, but please keep it to a minimum in March. March is a time to speak into existence what you want because your expression is a manifestation tool in March. So if you sing, if you play music, if you have a platform to share your voice, if you do art, if you sell stuff, that's you, by the way, because marketing is your expression and your art, right? I always joke that my social media is my art because it is, right? Potentially, the way you embody is part of your art, the way you decorate your home or you decorate yourself or you decorate your space. This is your self-expression. So playing with that and really allowing that to expand through your felt sense. And what I mean by that is when you have a feeling, a felt sense that something should be shifted a little bit, just shift it and see what happens. It's a great time to experiment and notice like, oh, I tried it and look what happened. Here's the thing I tried. Here's the evidence of it. Cool. Good to know. Now I'm going to keep going or now I'm going to tweak it and adjust it. So in order for that experimentation, you would want to be connected to your intuition to get those like nudges of like, ooh, how am I going to like tweak, play, adjust, create, right? A very creative time. April is going to be more of that with anchoring in more. So if March was more of the like, ooh, let me try this, let me try that, April is the like, okay, I'm seeing some evidence. This is what I'm liking. This is what I'm not liking. So here is what I'm going to sort of stand on or anchor in. I might create like a process or a system or something repeatable because my experiment showed me this. Now that I've experimented and it showed me it, I want to turn it into a system or a process that's repeatable so that I can build momentum around it, right? Through experimentation is fun and playful, and you get those like little dopamine hits of trying something new, which is great, but it's not sustainable energy until you create a repeatable process and system around it. Yes, I love it. I love hearing that marketing and sales are an extension of people's spirituality because I am there too. And I think claiming marketing and sales as a spiritual practice is a take back. You know, that feels like a reclamation. That feels like a um claiming the sacredness that it means to be of service. And what a gift. What a gift. Makes me so happy. Okay, so we were talking about April. Okay, so May. May is going to be relationship building. It's also going to be this lightness, right? So in your relationship building, can you give yourself permission to be more playful and more adventurous? Can you experiment a little bit as being guided, right? Like through connection, through trial, through, exploration. Go on the hikes, go on the trips, put yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit and do it with loved ones. Do it with people who you're like, ooh, let's do this together, right? I think that's going to be really important. To me, that's the combination of, um, there's the five energy that's calling in the inner child, the explorer, and the change, right? Switching things up, changing things up, and travel. But then there's also this really dominant energy with the six coming up that's like, together in relationship, like with our people. Like, let's try this together. Feels like a good community building time as well. In June, we're going to recognize how our relationships are shifting and evolving, right? So the maybe the way we've related or the things we do or the circles we spend time with, there might be some shifts and some evolutions happening there because we are, I don't really like using the term up leveling, but we are strengthening and clarifying our thought patterns, right? We are getting more clear on the path we're choosing because there's no judgment. Choose one or the other. It's totally up to you. They're both available to you. Um, so recognizing our community impacts the narratives in our mind, and different communities have different narratives. So nurture the community that speaks the narrative that you would like to be a part of. And I know that can feel tricky, especially when you're like, they're family or I've known them for my whole life. But recognize to change the game, only one person's energy needs to shift, and the entire game has the potential to shift, right? So you don't have to change them, but you could think about changing yourself and changing what you're available for and what you're not available for. Something as simple as better boundaries or better communication can shift an entire dynamic in a family. Okay. Going into July, July feels like a really strong demarcation in the year, particularly the 24th of July. It feels like much of what we've been curious and trial and erroring and exploring starts to kind of stabilize and land, right? It starts to feel like, oh, okay, I think I've got the hang of this. It's like when you pick up a new sport. It's weird for a seven. I agree. So July is the seven, but the reason I'm picking up on this energy is on the 24th of July, there's on the new moon, there's a four of clubs and a four energy day. So it feels like with this intuitive feeling, this gut feeling, the risk taking and the exploration we've been doing to this point, now we're starting to be like, I'm not, it's like rollerblading. When you first put on your rollerblades, I'm taking myself back to the 90s here. When you first put on your rollerblades and your feet are kind of like all over the place and you have no idea what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I have my balance, I have my footing. Okay, this is cool, right? I should have used ice skating because we went ice skating the other day. That would have been a better example. So it does feel like we kind of find our footing, we find our anchor point. It feels like a little bit more of like solidity behind some of the experiments and the curious things we've been exploring is on the 24th. And then the reason I say that is because after the 24th, every single full moon and new moon contains four energy. So it just feels like this like line in the sand moment to some degree of like, okay, you experimented, you got the evidence, land it in, ground it in, create the structure, create the system around it. Now that's not to say, like as you're hearing me say this, that's not to say if you don't have that dialed now, anchor it in now. You don't have to wait for July. Like this is where your own lens of discernment comes in. But even if you're like, oh yeah, I have it dialed in, be open to expansion because that's what the nine is looking for, right? Is that closing of the doors of an old way to welcome in a new way. And to be real, even though I'm saying closing of the doors, it's never like, you know, a hard line in the sand, right? Energy runs in like bell curves and ebbs and flows. So recognizing that through the curiosity and the experimentation, come July 24th and going forward, there's going to just be this feeling of like, okay, I'm not on quicksand anymore. I'm on like a foundation that feels like, okay, I can build something solid here. Going into August, August is the devotion, the dedication, the commitment of the eight. It's also where we are creating things because of the way the energy is dispersed throughout the month. So it's a great time to create stuff, whether it's like create an offer, create a message around an offer, create a graphic around something, create a workshop around something, create a new marketing campaign with the specific messaging that you got clear on because of all this experimentation you've been working with. So create something that's going to give value, that's going to create value. And the thing I love about the concept of giving value, there's no such thing as just giving value because we don't work in a vacuum. If I give value, I automatically receive value. That is part of the sacred exchange. People don't give money for something unless they're getting more value back than the dollars they spent, right? And you can look at that in any form of investment. I won't give you my energy if I don't think something I'm getting out of it is going to be better than that energy, right? We invest in things because of that amplification. So the value in what you create gets to grow and expand for your community and you in August. September is a speak your truth month. Speak your truth, share your message, be vocally expressive. Don't speak to the realities you don't want. Be very clear on what you're creating and recognize the spell in your words, right? Is going to be so important. And unleash your self-expression. Find ways to unleash it, even if it's alone, right? Even if it's like in the car singing at the top of your lungs or on your hike talking to the trees, whatever that looks like for you, but be willing to express. So if you have the opportunity to market, promote, pitch, deliver a training, keynote speak, take it, take it, take it, take it. Yes, investing in the amplification. Absolutely. I love that. That's a great way to word it. Moving into October, October is a 1/10 energy month. So the one cycles us back to a new beginning again, but it's not a new beginning from nothing. It's a new beginning based on innovation, based on picking up the pieces you want to move forward and build upon, and then leaving behind those that belong in the old cycle, right? So it's an iteration, it's a learning, and an innovative time. So letting yourself grow, letting yourself innovate. I also see that this will be a great month, particularly around the 21st of the month for divine downloads and sparks of ideas to come through. This is not the only day for that. As I'm saying that, I'm like, just be clear. It's not like you have to wait for October for a divine download to hit. There's plenty of chances of that. Watch my monthly forecast for more specifics or get a private forecast. But it does feel like it's going to be a strong one because it's going to directly be related to innovating and new activations. Moving into November, we've got this energy of leadership through relationship and leadership through how we relate. So I feel like this can show up in a few ways. It can show up in like mentoring and, working with people who you're trying to help and train and support. It can work in like coaching or healing or, being a practitioner and leading in that way. It can also work in leading through just the embodiment of I am going to, if I want to see a particular energy, particular light, a particular trait or characteristic in the world, the best way to do it is to be it. So rather than seeking it outside of me, I'm just going to choose to embody it. I wish the world was more loving, so I'm going to choose to be more loving. I wish the world was more playful. I'm going to choose to be more playful. I wish the world was more adventurous. I'm going to choose to be more adventurous. So it's this idea of that when you embody the energy that you're seeking, you become a magnet for other people who also want that energy, will invest in that energy, and that means that you both get to help each other ladder up into that energy together, right? So fun. And December is a 3 energy month. This is going to be about creation, expression, but really in a heart-centered way. The last 2 months of the year feel very rooted in this heart connection energy and this relationship energy. So I think letting yourself express and create with that in mind. So it's like even thinking back to what we said about November, it's like, well, if I want to see this certain energy, I have to be willing to embody it myself. So if I'm embodying it, how do I build it into what I'm doing? Right? How do I build it into day-to-day life? That to me, that's one of the best reasons why healers and energy workers and open-hearted people and heart-centered people build businesses. Because as soon as you build a business, you've now built your life around this and you create money with it, which creates an amplifying impact and it just gets to grow and expand. And even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if it's just like, this is what I do in my job, as soon as you invest, so investing can happen with money, with time, and with energy. So, of course, we invest in our passions with energy or with time. But if you also invest in them with money, then you have that like trifecta, right? And absolutely, I will be sending out a replay. Don't you worry. I know there's a lot to take in. And I also recommend listening to it a couple times throughout the year, like listen to it every quarter just to kind of help solidify as you go. So, yeah, December, creation, expression, heart centered energy. I am feeling really excited about this. I would love to hear from you guys in the chat, or you can unmute and let me know. What is the piece that you've heard where you're like, that's the thing I needed to hear? That is something that maybe hit home for me or struck a chord. I'd love to hear what is kind of landing. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. This year has had moments of, I can be part of the solution and change instead of just witnessing and complaining about it. Oh my God, I hear you. So good. So what's landing? Or if anyone has any questions, yeah, go for it, Leanne.
I'll say one thing that I'm not excited to hear, but it's also a good thing to hear at the same time. I definitely I'm for sure gonna do like a teaching community next year that I've wanted to do for like years and years and years, and I'm just gonna go forth and do it. And I'm right now very like amped up about it and like want to launch it as soon as possible. So the hard thing for me to hear is in listening to sort of the string of events is it'll probably happen later than I currently think it'll happen, but it is 100 million% gonna happen and be like amazing and impactful. And like all like the stuff that's later in the year very much lines up with exactly what I'm planning to create.
Beautiful.
So also permission for myself to be like, it's okay if it doesn't happen on January 1st. It's okay if it happens in like April or June, right? Like that's okay.
Totally. And it might work out that way. Also, give yourself permission to beta, like to do beta testing. And the beta testing might happen sooner and then the landing happens later. Like then this is where there's always sort of nuance to it too, right? So it's like if you do feel like I need to do something sooner, trust that and give yourself permission to like tweak it as you go if that comes up as well.
Yeah,
I love
I'm
that.
real excited. I'm really excited for next year.
Me too. I'm so glad to hear it. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to unmute and share? Yes, please, Karina.
Hey, this was so amazing. Um, I just want to share, well, first of all, I want to thank you for being such an amazing numerologist and teacher. I actually downloaded a message from a crystal today that basically gave the whole layout of the year. And then hearing you explain all of this was like, oh my God, Karina, like it's so crazy. And it just inspired me to go back to my numerology training and really put all of this in practice because holy smokes, this year is just going to be so amazing and I'm so excited. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to share all of this information with us. And I'm just in so much gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And thank you for sharing. I'm excited you're going to pull out your numerology stuff again. So good. I'm just reading some of your chats. Yes, it's all landing. I love and resonate with the mindset rehearsal. Absolutely. The endings and the beginnings, transitions feel really big. Yeah. Community shifts and changes. Absolutely. Um, yeah. So the other thing I just wanted to share a little bit is why we use the numerology for this, right? There's lots of modalities you can use, like as you know, Karina so beautifully said, downloading this information from a crystal. You can use lots of other modalities. And it's important, I think, to really recognize that we get drawn to the modalities that speak to us, and that's perfect. And that different modalities give you different maps, right? So different numerology, or sorry, different numerology, different modalities give you different maps, and the map you can best understand is the one you should work with to find your way. I personally choose numerology because of a couple of different things that have become so clear to me in the past year. Um, when people are experiencing the symptom of feeling stuck, it is a result of energetic inertia, right? And when that happens, it's actually the symptom of like the uncertainty kicking in. And when the uncertainty kicks in, we tend to go into freeze mode, right? Or pause mode, or like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen next. So let me like stop and like gather myself. And that's great. We should do that. Stop and gather yourself. But if you're not able to keep moving forward, you will never get to have like a full and complete transformation. So if you're feeling stuck, that's where coming back to your numerology can help to clarify how am I supposed to move forward on this, right? The other symptom that has been coming up is the symptom of like frustration. And the symptom of frustration, when people are feeling it, it's been shown to me that this is actually this sense of like, you know what your complete transformation looks like. You know what your end game looks like. You know what your outcome looks like. And you're kind of muddied in the middle of some incomplete transformation. You're partway there and not full way there. So if you're experiencing that, again, you can align that with the numerology to recognize, where am I in the transformation cycle? Why am I stuck not being able to complete and feeling this sense of frustration with the lack of the outcome that I truly want? The other piece that comes up is the symptom of self-doubt. And when the symptom of self-doubt comes up, this is number one, lack of connection with your intuition and your inner voice. And number two, it's also related to not feeling fulfilled or activated with your soul gifts, right? With your vibrational medicine, with the energy you are here to embody, to carry, and to share. And again, this is where, for me, I come back to looking at my chart and looking at my codes and getting those clues is, well, my code says this about me. Am I embracing and embodying it? Or am I like avoiding it and ignoring it and, you know, getting stuck in self doubt because I'm not aligned with what I'm here to embody, express, and share, right? So that can be so super, super powerful. I will be going into the details of how, as a coach, healer, practitioner, energy worker, anybody who works with people, like if you're here to help people go through something or change through something or strengthen something, I will be sharing a training on January 15th, completely free, on how you can use numerology to help your clients. If your clients have symptoms of being stuck, being uncertain, being frustrated, or self doubt, those would be the main sort of symptoms that this training will help you support your clients with. So if you want to know more about that, send me a note saying training or comment in the chat saying training, and I'll make sure I share that with you. It'll be on January 15th. And I 100% will do a January forecast, and I'll probably do it after New Year's. So I'll probably do it on, like, I don't know, the 2nd or the 3rd or something of January, something like that. So if you're on my email list, which you all should be, you'll get a notification for that as well. That was so fun and so good to connect with you guys. Any burning questions before we wrap up the last of this call? I'm so grateful for your energy. If you received a gift or a benefit from this, I would love to gratefully receive a testimonial from you. If you'd send me a little email or a little note, a little voice note, anything like that, that would mean the world to me. And I will be sending out the replay in the next day or two. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with you throughout the year. Merry Christmas. Happy end of the year. Oh, yes, the numerology planner. I know. Hey, Karina. I feel like I have to publish my numerology book before I start a new project. I have to finish one project before I start a new one. Maybe with the 9, it will help me finish the book, right? Yes, I do. You guys are amazing. Thank you, everyone. Mwah. Enjoy your Christmas break, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye. Happy Yule. Thank you.